Thank you. So good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me on this. Well, it's beautiful and sunny here in Bournemouth on this sunny morning to learn more about how to strengthen your personal relationships. So I am just going to open the comments so I can see all of your comments. And yes, just a little bit about me. My name is Emma. I'm a professional coach. I specialize in well-being and resilience. And one of the things that I do when I work with people is to help them to strengthen their personal relationships, as well as lots of other things to help improve their well-being and resilience. So if we could start with the first slides, please, Victoria, that would be great. Fabulous. Thank you so much. Okay, so strengthening your personal relationships by me. So a little bit about me. I'm a professional certified coach. I have 1,200 hours of coaching experience. I've been coaching quite a long time. I work with local organisations and private clients all over the world through the wonders of Zoom. I offer coaching and workshops on a range of topics, including resilience and well-being, which is what we're doing today, leadership development, career development, parental transition, and redundancy. I'm also a mental health first aider, a positive psychology practitioner, which we're going to be talking about a lot today, and a mindfulness meditation teacher. So that's a little bit about me. If you want to just pop in the comments where you're calling in from today, just so I can see who we've got with us this morning, that would be great. I've already seen that we've got Karen this morning, we've got Catherine, morning Kath, we've got Irene, good morning, you were with me on Monday I think, and we've got Adrienne as well, morning. Welcome to this morning. Really excited to be back in the virtual village hall for the Royal Voluntary Service to explore Mindspace Week. As you probably know, it was the World Mental Health Day on Monday. And this week, the virtual village hall are doing some absolutely amazing content to help you to explore your mental well-being and to kind of take care of yourselves. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. So let's just have a look at the comments. Has anyone else popped in? I know it's quite an early morning start, this one, but hopefully it'll be worth it. All right, morning, Karen dialing in from Blackpool. Fabulous. Okay, so these are the NHS 5 steps to mental well-being. So going from left to right, we've got connect, be active, take notice, keep learning, and give. Now, you guys, if you're volunteers, you will absolutely be giving your time and your energy for the organisations that you volunteer for. But today we're going to be looking at number 1, which has got the big blue arrow over it, and that is connect. And that is to talk and listen. It's to be there, and it's to feel connected with other people. Okay, who else have we got? We have got Rachel, who is watching in Burton in Trent. We've got other people joining us. So as I said, we're starting with connect, which is the first one of the social connect, the NHS 5 steps to wellbeing. Okay, so why is social connection, which is what positive psychology researchers call it, or what we like to call it, is good personal relationships. Why are good personal relationships really important? Well, that's because being and feeling connected to people around us is absolutely essential to our well-being, our resilience, which is our ability to bounce back after challenges and setbacks, and also for our own happiness. So in short, we need good personal relationships to flourish both mentally and physically. They're really, really important to us. Now, there's been a lot of research into why that actually is. And the current thinking is that back in the days of early Homo sapiens, the first ancestors of the human beings that we are today, this is about 300,000 years ago, we lived in a tribe of around 100 people. And we would have a really important role to play in that tribe. So we knew our role in that tribe. We knew what we were doing. And that tribe would be really important to us to make sure that we were safe and fed. And so we would need to be part of that tribe, and we would need to get along with the members of that tribe because it's absolutely essential for our survival. And we would have a really important role to play in that tribe as well. So the research is now coming out saying that we're actually hardwired to need social connection. We need that for various things. So for a sense of belonging, for a sense of safety, for a sense of autonomy and fairness. There's lots of kind of reasons coming out of the neuroscience research as to why we need social connection. But in a nutshell, the benefits of social connection are it gives us the opportunity to love and be loved. And so positive psychology researchers say that love is the primary human emotion. And we need good social connections to be able to love and be loved by others. It gives us a sense of belonging, which is absolutely essential to human beings. And it also helps to shape our identity. Good quality relationships and personal connections help us to learn, grow, and develop when we're around other people with different backgrounds, different perspectives, different ways on viewing the world. That all helps us to learn, grow, and develop. It helps us to provide us with emotional support and allows us to provide support to others, and that helps to build our resilience. It helps us to share positive experiences. Things are generally better when we're doing it with another person, or they're more fun at least. It contributes to our own personal sense of meaning, and it gives us a sense of enjoyment, fun, and laughter. Now, if like me, you're sitting here going, yes, that is possible, but it has to be a really good quality relationship or a really positive personal relationship to allow those things, you're absolutely right. And I'm going to come on to that in a bit more detail later. So on the right-hand side of this slide, we've got some key areas that positive psychology research has demonstrated as to why good quality relationships are so important. So it has been proven to increase our level of happiness and our level of well-being. It increases our level of self-esteem, which is how we think about ourselves. It actually lowers the risk of poor mental health. And this point I think is absolutely astonishing. It improves our immunity and our recovery from illness and increases our chances of living longer. And again, if we think back to the days of early man, back in 300,000 years ago, it absolutely would increase our chances of living longer if we had a really important role to play and we got on with the people in our tribe. And that's still true today. It also reduces our levels of stress, which comes with a whole host of multiple physical and mental benefits. So these are the reasons why really good quality personal relationships are important to us. I'm just going to give you a chance just to read what's on that slide and say good morning to Nadine, who is watching from Wigan near Greater Manchester. Karen says, I did one of your Circle of Life things the other day. Wow, an eye-opener. Oh, fantastic, Karen. That's really great. Thank you for doing that. And thanks for the feedback. Margaret says, good morning from beautiful Northumbria. Good morning, Margaret. And I think that's everybody. We've mentioned Nadine. Yeah. Well, welcome to everybody here. So I mentioned just now that good quality personal relationships are essential, which they absolutely are. Bad quality personal relationships, the relationships that cause us stress, that give us challenges, and don't make us feel good fundamentally, have a really significant opposite effect to everything that is listed on the right-hand side of this slide. So if you have poor quality personal relationships, it brings all of this stuff down. So it reduces your happiness, well-being, it reduces your self-esteem, increases your risk of poor mental health, etc., etc. So good quality personal relationships is where it's at. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. How to identify good quality personal relationships, how to figure out who you want to spend your precious time and energy with, and how to build and nurture those relationships to ensure that they are really good quality. We're also going to be looking at how to put steps in place to manage difficult relationships. You know, we're all unique individuals. We're all flawed human beings to one extent or another. And so sometimes our relationships run into difficulty. Something happens and it's not going as well as it might. And I'm going to teach you some tips and tools that you can take away to improve those relationships and try and get them back into the good quality space. All right, so quality over quantity is key. So what positive psychology researchers have found is that there's no simple answer to how many social relationships we need to support our happiness and well-being, but the quality of those relationships is really important. So poor quality relationships and negative exchanges increase our stress, compromise our physical health, and increase our risk of poor mental health. Conversely, good quality relationships, which are the ones that we're going to be focusing on today, have these characteristics. Now, there is a workbook that accompanies this present workshop today, and Victoria is going to very kindly put a link to where you can download the workbook and you can go through this information in your own time. We're going to cover quite a lot of content today. We're going to rattle on through it, but the workbook will help you to think about this in your own time. Or, you know, Karen's saying she's on the tube at the minute, so maybe when you've got a moment, you can download the workbook and have a look when you're ready. So the key characteristics of a good quality relationship are being dependable. And this is how people are to you. Do you see this in other people? And also, do you see this in yourself? So a really good characteristic, if I can say it, is being dependable, being honest, being loyal, having a sense of commitment to that relationship. And I think that's really under pressure at the moment with social media and it's not the advent of messaging services, but messaging services make it very easy to go back on a commitment. So really strengthening that level of commitment is a really fantastic characteristic to have to nurture a quality relationship. Then we have kindness, having a sense of love and or care, having a sense of playfulness and fun, understanding, acceptance of the other person for who they are, being authentic, being able to be yourself and open up to that other person, and being open and honest. Being authentic is really important. Being able to trust the other person, feeling encouraged, supportive, and having some companionship. And this last one, balance, can be a little bit of a tricky area, right? So having a sense of balance with your relationships is that there is some give and take. And this means that sometimes you could be going through a difficult situation and you might need more from your friends than you are able to give at that time. But balance means that when the situation is reversed, you are there for that other person as well. So it's not necessarily balance on a day-to-day basis, but it's balance over a period of time within that relationship. If that relationship is a little bit one-sided and the relationship doesn't make you feel good, and it's always been that way, it's not because they're going through a difficult time right now, you might want to just kind of have a think about whether that relationship is good quality and whether you want to invest more of your time and energy into nurturing it. Okay, so again, this is in the workbook. The link is in the comments where you can download the workbook in your own time. So this is a really valuable exercise to do. I've done this exercise and it was a real eye-opener. So I really encourage you to do it when you get the chance. And this is about mapping out your own personal community. So if positive psychology researchers have found that our close, secure, and supportive relationships, the ones that demonstrate those characteristics on the previous slide, are the most important for our happiness and well-being, it's absolutely essential to us. It makes sense that we give our time and our energy and our attention, excuse me, to those relationships that are positive. We've only got so much time and attention and energy, and you can't kind of spread it out over everybody, I would argue. So directing where you put that attention and building and nurturing those quality relationships is really quite important. So this little exercise allows you to map out who those people are in your life, and obviously it's going to be unique to you. So as you can see, we've got the circles on the right hand side, and in the center we've got the word you. So it's about looking at who are the most important people in your life, and if they're really important to you, you put them in the inner circle, like close to the word you. If they're less important, you might put them into one of the other circles. And so you might want to think about your partner if you have one, your family, your friends, work colleagues, neighbours, any communities that you're part of, any social activities you're part of. So all of the groups of people that you know, you may wish to map them on this personal community here. Then once you've mapped out all of the people and you've put them into one of these circles, just spend a moment thinking, how much time do you spend with them? And then you have a little think about how much attention and energy do you give to them. And you might find that actually you spend a lot of time with people who aren't really that important to you, and you give a lot of attention and energy to people who aren't so important to you. And you might want to switch that round. So for the people who are in that inner circle who are really important to you, you might want to think about giving your time and your energy to them and not to the people who are in the outer circle. This is a really good question to ask. Are these people radiators or drains? Now, radiators are people who fill you up with energy. They're really positive, and you spend time with them and you feel great. And you come away thinking, yeah, that was a really fantastic social connection. I really enjoyed spending time with that person. That person is a radiator. Or is that person a drain? So you spend time with that person, they can be quite negative, maybe they criticize you, maybe they're just not very nice, or you come away from spending time with them and you feel a bit exhausted and a bit drained. Those people are drains. Now, this is not to say that that person is going through a difficult time and they need their support. It's if this person has generally always been like that, and you spend time with them, it doesn't make you feel great. So determining who are radiators and who are drains can be quite helpful. And then once you've kind of mapped this out on your personal community and you've asked yourselves these questions, you may want to circle any people who you'd actively like to build or nurture your relationship with. So this can be, this can feel quite transactional. But again, because you've only got so much time and energy, I would suggest it's really important. And when I did this exercise, I realized that I was putting my time and my energy in the wrong place, and it made me kind of just shift things around. So I found this exercise really helpful, and I hope you will too. Okay, then we move on to what we actually need to do to nurture quality relationships. So that, again, this all comes from positive psychology research. And there are actually 5 key areas. I know there's only 4 on the slide. We'll get to number 5 in a minute. But there are 5 key areas that you can focus on to build and nurture your quality relationships and make those relationships that are really important to you that much better and more meaningful. And that will not only benefit the other person, it will also benefit you. So there's quite a lot to say on this one, so bear with me. Okay, so the first one that we need to really focus on, and this is absolutely essential. If you don't do any of the others, I would suggest that you really do this one, which is stop multitasking and start listening. So just have a moment to think about what you do when someone comes to talk to you when you're in the middle of something. Do you stop what you're doing? So, if you're cooking, do you actually turn the gas off or whatever, and actually stop cooking and turn around to talk to them? Or if you're on your phone, do you actually put your phone down? Or do you actually just carry on with what you're doing and not give that person the full attention? So if you want to pop in the comments how you usually respond when somebody comes up and wants to talk to you. Do you give them their full attention, or do you just simply acknowledge their presence for a moment and then carry on with what you're doing? And in your workbook, there's space to kind of explore this in a bit more detail. But I'd really invite you just to have a think about, if you don't give that person your full attention, so let's say they come up to you and you just go, oh, hi, and then you just carry on with your phone, what message does that send to them? And how does it feel when somebody does it to you? So if you can stop what you're doing and give that person your full attention, it will really help to build and nurture a good quality relationship. And positive psychology researchers have found that actually active listening, where you give your full attention to somebody else and listen to what they're saying, is one of the most effective relationship and communication skills that we can develop. When we listen with our full attention and send signals to them to show that we're listening, such as giving them eye contact, smiling, having an open body posture, maybe nodding to show that we're listening, that can really benefit the other person and also yourself. We might also choose to reflect back what we've heard to check our understanding. We might ask questions to clarify and further explore what they're saying. And when we do this, we practice active listening. It shows that we are interested in that person and we care about them, and we respect them. We're giving them our time and attention, and we respect them enough to do so. All right, so then we go on to bump up your bids and turns, which I know sounds a little bit strange, but this is a positive psychology term to say that in close relationships, we make small, frequent bids for each other's attention, and how we respond to those bids impacts the quality of our relationships. So if you imagine that you're in the same room as a friend or a family member and you're reading a magazine and they're looking at their iPad or they're looking at their phone. So your friend or family member chuckles to themselves and you ask them what's funny. So when you ask them what's funny, that is a bid. And then they go on to explain that what they're laughing at, and you both laugh for a moment before you go back to what you're doing. So in asking what your friend found funny, you're making a bid, and they turn towards you by sharing what they found funny. So that is a bid and that is a turn. And these bids and turns build and maintain a sense of connection between you and other people. So by contrast, you could have ignored their chuckle, or you could have asked them what was funny and they could have said, oh, nothing. And these are examples of turning away, and they are a lost opportunity to connect. Or alternatively, you could have asked them to be quiet when they chuckled, or they could have responded, well, you always want to stick your nose in my business. And these are actually highly corrosive examples of turning away. So positive psychology researchers have found that happy couples turn towards their partners' bids 85% of the time. So whenever your partner makes a bid for your attention, a happier couple will turn towards that bid 85% of the time. And they make up to 20 times more frequent bids and turns than unhappy couples. So I find that quite astonishing, really. So yeah, bids and turns maintain that level of connection between you. Then we go on to section number 3. And this is about saying thank you. So by taking your thank yous to another level, it shows that you've noticed and appreciated what the other person has done. You see and value them as a person. And actually, there are 3 different levels of saying thank you. So I'm sure that we all say the simple thank you, which is just acknowledging somebody for what they've done, just a simple thank you. Level 2, I like to call thank you plus. This is saying thank you and then adding the beneficial impact of what that person has done for you. So, for example, you could say, Thank you for offering to help me with the cooking. I really appreciate it because it took the pressure off me. So you're saying your thank you, but you're explaining why. And then level 3, which I like to call thank you extra, is saying thank you, noting the beneficial impact of what that person has done for you, plus acknowledging the strengths and qualities of that other person. So, for example, that could be, thank you for offering to help with the cooking. I really appreciate it because it took the pressure off me, and I'm grateful for your thoughtfulness in making the time to help. So I know this sounds like quite a mouthful to say, go over and above a simple thank you. But actually, when you do it, it is like watering a flower. So when you say thank you plus and thank you extra by noting the beneficial impact and the strengths and qualities that person has demonstrated, it really makes them blossom, and it can have a really significant impact on the quality of your relationships. So thank yous are quite quick and easy to do. And stop multitasking and listening is also another one that has, like, so if you're only going to do a few of these, it's these two I would recommend. And then we've got ask about the good stuff. So positive psychology researchers have found that it's not just listening and being supportive when things have gone wrong that are important for a relationship. And actually that is really important. So to be there for your friends when they're going through difficult times and your family members. But what they found is it's really important for nurturing and building a good quality relationship to notice how you respond when your friend or family member shares good news. So positively responding to good news has been shown to have a greater impact on how highly the other person rates the quality of the relationship. So it seems that the typical ways that we might respond to good news are not always beneficial. I'm going to have a look at this now. So being there for your friends and family when they're going through difficult times and challenges is obviously really important for building and nurturing a good quality relationship, as I've said, but also responding when they tell you good news is equally important and actually has a greater impact. So we've got a little grid here, which I shall explain in a moment. But as I go through this, if you'd like to pop in the comments how you think you usually respond when others tell you good news, that would be really helpful. And to be honest, when I learnt about this, I'll hold my hand up here. I was like, oh, wow, I do B, which is passive destructive. So when someone tells me good news, I grab the limelight and switch the conversation around to myself. And knowing this really helped me to kind of change how I respond to someone else's good news. I thought that I was building and nurturing that relationship by sharing good news of my own and kind of getting on the good news train, so to speak. But actually, positive psychology research has shown that it's not beneficial to do that. So we're just going to explore this in a bit more detail. And I think this is quite an important one to look at. So we might have typical ways in which we respond when other people tell us good news. So in this grid, we've got passive and active down the left-hand side, and we've got constructive and destructive across the top. So A, which is in the top left corner, is the passive constructive. So when someone tells you good news, you would just simply acknowledge the news and you move on. Oh, that's great. That's fantastic news. Really pleased to hear that. Now then, let's talk about something else. And you might use A with the people that you're closest to. And then moving across to the top right-hand side, we've got passive destructive, which is B, which is the one I used to do, which is they tell you good news and you grab the limelight and switch the conversation around to yourself. So they might say, oh, I've got a new job and I'm really excited about it and I'm going to be doing this new thing. And then an example of responding in a B manner, a passive destructive manner, is to say, "Oh, that's amazing! I'm really pleased for you. I've got a new job too, and I'm going to be working on this, and it's in this company." And so you're kind of switching it around to yourself. And then if we go to the bottom left, we've got active constructive, which is you focus on the other person, you show an interest by asking them questions, and you help the person explore their good news. So basically, you put all of your attention on to them. So again, this is about stop multitasking and listening. It is about asking open questions, and it's helping the other person explore their good news. And as you've probably guessed, C is what we need to be doing more of. And the chances are, if you have children or grandchildren, you might be doing it with them already. It's positive psychology researchers have found that we tend to use C when we're talking to younger children. However, we might use the active destructive approach, which is D in the bottom right, which is where you immediately identify the downsides, risks, and concerns of whatever they're telling you. And we might do this with teenagers. So hopefully that makes sense to you. If you'd like to just pop in the comments how you would usually respond when somebody shares good news to you, whether that's A, B, C, or D, that would be really helpful for me to kind of see where you're at with this slide. That'd be helpful. Okay, I'm just going to watch them come through. So as the comments come through, I just invite you to explore, and again, this is in your workbook so you can explore in your own time. I invite you to explore which type of response would most actively nurture a relationship. And top tip, the answer is C, which is active constructive, focusing on them, showing an interest by asking questions, helping them explore their good news, helping them to relive that good news and share it with you. That is the most positive way of nurturing a relationship. And then if we go back to your personal community map, I invite you to just have a look at who you might like to respond to differently. So knowing this information, you can now go back to your map and think, right, well, what do I want to change here in order to actively build and nurture that relationship? Okay, so we're getting some comments come in. Karen says, on responding to good news, Karen says, I give them a big hug, or a, yeah, well done, brilliant. Or if you're on the phone, you ask them to tell me more about it, which is amazing. So that feels like a C to me. Margaret says mostly an A. Nadine says C. I always want them to feel good and learn more about their news, which is a fantastic. This is really, really great. As I said, I was generally a B, but I try very carefully to move into the C. And I also try and use C with my family. You know, when I'm with my husband, it's very often A, to be honest, because, you know, we've got a lot going on in the house and I don't generally have the time to respond in a particular, in a C type manner, but that's something that I have to work on. All right. So thank you for your comments, everyone. That was really helpful. Okay. And then the last one on nurturing quality relationships is at the bottom, which is focusing on what is right with the other person. And this is an absolute game changer, because if you are having difficulties with somebody or that relationship is proving quite challenging, this is something that you can, and they have to be in your life, and it would be really helpful if you had a good quality relationship with them. This is something that you can do really quickly and easily before you see them. So this is focusing on what's right with them. So this is being aware of what you focus on when you think about them, what you focus on when you're actually with them and you're interacting with them. So ideally, you want to be focusing on something that you really like or appreciate about that person, and not something that irritates you and that you wish you could change. Now, I would say that neuroscience and positive psychology researchers have found that we have 5 times more circuitry in the brain to look for negative things. And we used to do this because back in the days of early man, a negative thing could actually kill us. So it would be really important for us to look at negative things because it would help our long-term survival. However, we don't live in that environment anymore. We don't interact with things that could kill us that often. But we still have the same kind of circuitry in the brain. The brain has not evolved to cope with the life that we live today. So that 5 times more circuitry is looking for negative things. We're hardwired to do it. If you do it, don't beat yourself up about it. Everybody does it, and we're hardwired to do it. However, for a good quality relationship, we really need to kind of switch that circuitry off and start focusing on the good things about that person. And positive psychology researchers have found that a happy relationship is focusing on the good things, what you like or love about the other person. And it can be really powerful to just spend a few minutes going back to your personal community map and thinking about the people who are in the inner circle, who are closest to you, the really important people who are closest to you. Just spend a few minutes coming up with 2 or 3 things that you really like or love about that person and really focusing on those things with them. And researchers have found that this is really powerful for people in helping professions, particularly counselors and coaches like myself. So one of the things that I was taught when I did my coach training is to hold my clients with unconditional positive regard, UPR. And the way that you do that is to think positively about them. And if you think positively about them, and so I spend a few minutes before I have a coaching session just thinking about my client and all of the good things that they do and the wonderful person that they are. And I go into that coaching session with a very different hat on, so to speak. I'm showing up already thinking positively about them, and they can feel that. And I would argue that that is the same with all personal relationships. So focusing on what is right is super helpful. And so these are the top 5 things that you can do to build and nurture your quality relationships. Again, the workbook will help you explore this in more detail. But if you just want to pop in the comments, which one of these do you think is going to be most important for you to focus on? Obviously, doing all 5 might be quite tricky. I've recommended the stop multitasking and listen, and up leveling your thank yous can be really, really powerful. But which one of these 5 do you think you'd like to focus on with your personal relationships? If you just want to pop that in the comments for a minute, that would be really helpful. And as you do, we will just take a moment before we move on to how to manage difficult relationships. So as I've said previously, if we have relationships in our life which are really difficult, they're really challenging, they cause us a lot of stress, they cause us a lot of mental stress or challenges, and we find ourselves thinking about that person quite a lot, that can really significantly damage our level of well-being and resilience. So being able to manage those relationships can be really helpful. All right, so Nadine has said she's going to ask about the good stuff, which is great. It sounds like you already do that, Nadine, so that's brilliant. Bit more of the same, wonderful. Adrian says she is going to bump up the bids and turns. And there are people that she thinks about reaching out to, but never finds the time to do so. That is amazing. Fantastic. Margaret says she's also going to bump up the bids and turns. Absolutely. Sometimes we can get so involved in our own life and just kind of focusing on the things that are in front of us and just getting through the day that the whole bids and turns kind of falls by the wayside, doesn't it? So that's a really good one. And Karen says it varies as to what is needed at the time. Yeah, absolutely, Karen. Wonderful. So thank you for sharing that. Right, let's go on to dealing with relationship difficulties. So there is an absolutely amazing book, which was a life changer when I read it, which is called Non-Violent Communication. It's by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. He is an international peacekeeper, and he has created a really simple, quick and easy method for communicating with compassion when you are experiencing relationship difficulties, which is really helpful to build and nurture that relationship if you find that you need to. So positive psychology researchers have found that all human beings share the same basic needs, and our actions and behaviors are generally a strategy to meet those needs. Nadine says, can you tell me the book again? It's actually referenced at the back of the workbook, and it's on the next slide, but it's Nonviolent Communication by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. It's really good. Okay, so our actions and behaviors are a strategy to meet our needs. And if you can imagine that, all human beings have the same basic needs, but our needs will be unique to us in the moment. So relationship difficulties often come from not clearly communicating our needs, or from feeling that our needs are not being met. And if you can look at it from that point of view and kind of almost stand above the he said, she said, and look at it from like, right, what needs is the other person trying to meet? What needs am I trying to meet? Why is this relationship difficulty come about in the first place? Because it's basically down to needs and our behavior to meet the needs. Then that can be really helpful for you to just kind of step back a moment and decide how to deal with that difficulty. Our unmet needs can absolutely trigger an emotional reaction for sure. However, we always have a choice about how we respond to that. So the top tips for responding to relationship difficulties are to do it sooner rather than later. Do not let your irritations fester. Otherwise, they go from a molehill to a mountain very quickly. So if you've got something going on, there's a difficulty going on, then absolutely take a moment to think about it and use the steps on the next slide to figure out how you're going to communicate. But don't let it just fall by the wayside and fester. Be really clear about the issue that you're having trouble with and why it's important to you. Be super specific and focused. So talk about the issue at hand. Do not bring up a back catalogue of issues. Try and avoid generalizations such as you always, because number one, that's not true. And number two, it triggers defensiveness in the other person. And if the other person is feeling defensive, they will not be able to hear you. So, try not to do that. I know it's difficult when you're angry, but it can make the other person defensive and then you just get nowhere. Try and highlight a positive example if possible. So if they're doing something, but they have done the opposite of that, and that's really positive to you, then highlight that for sure. Give them an example of what you'd actually like. Try and stay calm, state the facts and how you feel, which I know is very difficult in the moment. So this can be really helpful. And when I learned this, it was an absolute game changer for me. And very often, if you're a people pleaser like myself, which is like you don't speak up because you want people to like you, then you can just let this slide. And by letting it slide, that irritation just sits there and it festers and it grows and becomes a big thing. And that the other person doesn't know any different. So they just carry on as normal. And this is when you can have real problems in a relationship. So it's really important that you communicate when there is conflict or problems in a relationship. So Dr. Marshall Rosenberg and his book, Nonviolent Communication, is amazing. And nonviolent communication is not about like slapping the other person when you're angry with them. It is about communicating with compassion during conflict. I find the term nonviolent quite confusing, and it took me quite a long time to get my head around that. But it's about compassionate communication during conflict. And there are actually 4 steps he talks about, but there is one that I think is really helpful to add if it's possible. So let's say you're experiencing some difficulty in a relationship and there is a challenge going on and it's really negatively impacting your well-being. So absolutely take a moment to follow these steps. Again, these are all in the workbook. Victoria's kindly put the link into the workbook in the comments for you to download when you're ready. And the 4 steps are observation, number 1. So what is it that you notice? What is it that's actually happening that's causing a challenge? And if you can go back to all behavior and action is to meet unmet needs, then you can take a bit of a step back. It's almost like having a helicopter view over the situation. So what have you noticed that you're not happy with? Then take a moment to determine, is this true? And is it absolutely true? Or is it an assumption? Or is there part of it that's an assumption? And very often we operate from assumptions that guide our life below the surface. So if you can be clear about, okay, what is actually true about this and what is an assumption I'm making, that can be very, very helpful to take a really neutral perspective and be very clear on what the facts are about this thing that's driving you nuts and causing the conflict. So when you're clear on what it is, take a moment to write that down. Then be really clear about how you feel about it and take ownership of your feelings. So you would say, I feel angry, frustrated, irritated, sad, whatever. And you name a feeling. Do not say, you made me feel, because again, that will make the other person feel defensive and they won't hear the rest of whatever you have to say. There's a really fantastic quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, I think, which says, no one can make you feel anything without your permission. So the other person might be doing something which is causing a challenge and a conflict. How you feel about that is your responsibility. They're doing their thing. How you feel is up to you. So absolutely name your feelings and take ownership of them. I feel. Then you name your needs and your wants. So what do you actually need in order to improve your well-being? And what would you also like in an ideal world? So needs and wants are 2 different things. If you need something, you absolutely need it to improve your well-being. That has a level of urgency around it. And so you can determine that that's a need. It's really important to you. A want is something that you'd quite like. If you don't get it, it's not the end of the world, but it would be really nice if you did. So be really clear on what you need and what you want and the difference between the 2. And then you make a request. So what is that specific thing that you need from the other person or you want from the other person, and be really clear about what that is. And you add, would you be willing to? Because it gives them a choice and they can say no. Or they can give you a counter offer, which is, well, no, you're not having that, but I could give you this. But giving them a choice means that you are not making a demand. And this is really essential for compassionate communication. And the last step, which Marshall Rosenberg doesn't really talk about, but I think is actually really quite important, is showing a level of empathy. So if you can understand where they're coming from in some way or another, that can really help them to feel less defensive and to hear what you have to say. It almost takes the wind out of their sails by saying, I understand that you did this for this reason, or this happened for this reason. I get that. However, that can really help the other person go, okay, well, she's not getting at me. She's not nagging me. There is actually no conflict here. This is a conversation. I know this is really hard. I coach my clients on this a lot. I do this. I find it really hard. It's not easy, but it's really helpful, because if there is conflict or challenge within a relationship, nothing will change unless you communicate. And this gives you a really wonderful structure to communicate. I feel super passionately about this because I know it really works. So if you are experiencing challenges and difficult relationships, I really encourage you to just sit down for a minute and have a think about these 4 or 5 steps and see if you can communicate with that person, and have a discussion with them about it. So the very, very best way to communicate compassionately when there's conflict is in one sentence. If you go in there and you give them a tirade and it goes on and on and on and on, they are going to have to try and make sense of what you're saying. It gives them more chance to be defensive, and eventually they're just going to switch off. So if you can get these points across in one sentence, really super powerful thing to do. It's quite hard, but it can be done. So there's an example at the bottom here. So the example is, and I'm going to point out the little bits for each of these stages. So when I ask a question and you don't answer, observation, I feel hurt, feelings, because I need to know that you have listened, needs. I'd really like it if you'd respond when I'm telling you something, wants. Would you be willing to do that? Request. So if you're able to get that out in one sentence, it's going to land with that other person. They don't have to make sense of it. And if you can add a little bit of empathy in there, such as, so when I ask you a question and you don't answer, I feel hurt because I need to know you've listened. I understand you're really busy, empathy. But I'd really like it if you could respond when I'm telling you something. Would you be willing to do that? So as we draw this session to a close, I'd just really like you to pop in the comments what your thoughts are about this compassionate communication during conflict. Have you tried it? Are you willing to try it? What do you think about it? If you could just pop that in the comments. And then we'll draw the session to a close. But if anybody's got any other questions or anything they want to add or they want to share from today's workshop, then please do pop that in the comments and I will answer them when I can. I will also go back into the comments later. So if there is anything, I can answer you on the comments on the Facebook page. So Alan says, this is really interesting. Is this aimed at the workplace or in personal life? And I say both, Alan. Absolutely, do it both. We have conflict and challenges in both places. I think it is going to be much more easily accepted in the workplace because there are certain rules about how we work with each other. But absolutely do it in your personal life as well. Really helpful. Nadine says that last part has taught me more than anything else has. Wow, amazing. Thank you very much, Nadine. Thanks for sharing that. If you love it, maybe see if you can get the book. It will tell you more about the process and how important it is. But yeah, real life changer for me. It's not easy, but if it gives you a real structure. So if you think, well, this is really annoying me and I need to say something, otherwise nothing will change, that structure can be super helpful. So I will bring the session to a close and just say thank you so much, everybody, for joining me this morning. It's been really lovely to share this information with you. I hope you're taking something away that's valuable to help build and nurture your quality relationships and recognize what they are as well from all of the people that you have in your life. and also to help you to deal with challenging relationships as well. And just final word, Karen says, I've tried it as my family has torn apart. Nothing is working, sorry to say. I'm really sorry to hear that, Karen. Yes, often when we try and communicate in a compassionate manner, if the other person is just not willing to hear it, and what you're communicating doesn't land, that's really interesting information for you as well. But I'm sorry to hear that's a challenging relationship for you. And then finally, Margaret says, I know at times I don't always communicate well with my partner, and your talk has definitely given me food for thought. So thank you. Wonderful. Well, thank you everybody for all your comments and for your time this morning. Wishing you a wonderful rest of the week, and I look forward to seeing you back in the virtual village hall another time. Okay, so bye for now, everyone.